LGNDLINE, we back. It's Jonchi, and today I'm here with today's guest, Kiera from Keys Cakery. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. So, back in town, right?
Yes.
Back in town. Business trip, personal trip.
It was vacation. I went to go see my friend Tiriana for a bit. She's down in Florida lonely, so
For sure.
nice little getaway.
Shout out to the bestie Terry. Shout out to Tiriana. So, just to introduce you to the LGNDLINE viewers, I want you to talk about your upbringing. Describe what that looked like, where you're from, and then just kind of go from there.
All right. So I was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's a small town in South Mississippi.
Shout out to the SIP.
I stayed there till I was about 2 weeks old, and then my parents moved us to New Orleans, and we stayed in New Orleans until Hurricane Katrina, and we evacuated and resettled in Atlanta.
Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. Crazy time, crazy events. Talk about it.
It was a pretty tough time for my family, especially myself, like being young and making the transition. Hurricanes wasn't something I was new to, but it definitely was a different experience for Hurricane Katrina. We evacuated to Mississippi, and it did hit there, just not as bad. So we didn't have any water, any electricity, barely any food because we couldn't really open up the fridges and stuff like that. So it was a tough couple of days of going through the storm and all the aftermath of it.
Talk about it. No food. So what were y'all doing?
We were like making sandwiches, but it was like very quickly because you couldn't open the fridge too long.
Wow.
So it's like we could only eat stuff that was like dry food, really, because you couldn't cook or anything like that.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That's a crazy situation. And so, age of 7, left New Orleans, moved to Atlanta. And so, where'd you move to in Atlanta?
We first went to Stone Mountain, and we lived with my cousin for a bit until we got a house in Snellville, Georgia.
Snellville. Talk about it.
Snellville is just a country suburban area that not much goes on. I did grow up around a lot of foreigners, so I did get a different experience because I would stay at their houses a lot when my parents used to work. So I kind of grew up mainly around Jamaican people. So that was a pretty cool experience moving there.
For sure. So for somebody who's never been to Snellville, describe that socioeconomic status. Like, is it, a lot of well-to-do people? Is it lower income living? Is it a lot of crime in this area?
I'd say when I first got there in Snellville, it was majority white, and it was like middle class with a little bit of lower middle class. But as time went on, it became more and more black. It became more middle class with more lower class. And they're trying to build it up, but it's probably about 50-50 white and black now. Gotcha.
Okay. And so, grew up in Snellville. And so describe your upbringing in school and, what type of student were you? Were you maybe like a good kid in school, making good grades, or you often in trouble, athlete, popular kid? Talk about it.
So I was quiet. I did not talk much. I tried to make myself invisible. I was pretty socially awkward, so that had a lot to do with the lack of friends that I had. But as I got older, I realized that I don't think I'll ever be a person that has a bunch of friends, so I think that's just who I was. But I was a fairly good student to the point where some of my teachers didn't even know my name. It was kind of weird, but
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And so, were you involved in school? Did you play any sports, do any activities?
I played softball. That's about it. That was my whole world. At one point, it's just softball. So, yeah.
Gotcha. And so, what high school did you graduate from?
South Gwinnett.
Okay, shout out South Gwinnett. The Comets. Shout out to them. And so, what was the next move?
College. That was really my only move. My parents are very strict about, you're going to college. Even though I knew all my talents could get me money without going to college, but they just felt like I needed to go. So I went to Kennesaw State University. I got my degree in Culinary Arts and Hospitality and Sustainability.
And so, did you graduate in how many years?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. And talk about it. Like, what was that experience at Kennesaw State like? Was it maybe a culture shock from high school, or, how was that transition?
It wasn't too much of a culture shock. It was a little bit because everyone was white. And even though at my school we had white people, it was still majority Black and Hispanic people. But I did grow up playing softball, and most of the travel teams I played on, it was a lot of white girls. So I was familiar with how they partied and had fun and things like that. But it still wasn't to the extent that I experienced it when I got to Kennesaw. I went abroad to Peru, and I studied more culinary, but specifically I studied baking and pastry in Spanish.
Okay, so Peru, what was that experience like?
It was amazing. The best experience of my life.
Talk about it.
Well, for one, it was just a completely different experience, just going there by myself, figuring everything out.
Wait, let me stop you. What age is this?
21.
21, okay.
Yeah. So I had my 22nd birthday out there by myself, and it wasn't a culture shock because a lot of the stuff actually was really the same and kind of functioned the same as America, but it still was different. And I think everyone should do it at least once. If you have the opportunity to go out the country for an extensive time, I think you should definitely do it because I feel like you find a new part of yourself, and I feel like I did while I was out there.
So you found like you got a little bit more in touch with yourself while studying abroad. Mm-hmm. For sure. But when you were out in Peru, what's like one of the craziest things you saw, or like one of the wildest stories that you can share?
Oh man, Peru
So
actually
not too many, huh?
Not too many, because Peru is actually a very quiet, safe place. I used to walk the streets at night by myself, and it was fine. I don't suggest anyone do that. I just have a thing where I don't really care about certain things. But there, it really was fine. They have police on like every single corner. You can constantly hear them outside your window as they ride by. But if I had to choose one of the craziest things, is that when I was riding in a Uber to my friend's house, I saw a man using the bathroom on the side of the road, but like he was like using the bathroom on the side of the road.
Doing number 3.
Yeah. Sure. And I was like, oh, okay.
They getting lit. Yeah, they lit down here.
So that's about it.
For sure. And so how long did you stay?
6 months.
6 months. Okay. And then when you came back to the States, what exactly did you get into? Where, did you jump right back into, cake making and?
I didn't get into much because COVID happened and I just kind of shut everything down. I did get a job at a bakery like down the street from me, but when COVID happened, it was immediately shut down because nobody really needed cakes.
So why did that, stop things for cakes? Of course, people aren't having, as much weddings and the big time events, but how did that really affect your industry?
Well, at the time I hadn't opened up my business just yet. And the bakery I was at it was at the point in time where it had to shut down. So eventually it did open back up, and I worked there probably for about 9 months or so. And then I quit and started my business. Gotcha.
Okay. And so you started your business right out of COVID?
Yeah. It was at the end of 2020.
End of 2020. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what was that transition like, fresh out of COVID, things just being in like a weird space? Mm-hmm. Talk about it.
It wasn't too bad just because I was doing my online baking stuff. So like I was making treats and then sending them off. And a lot of people still wanted that because it was personal gift items compared to like buying a cake because you're having a party, because a lot of people at the time still weren't throwing too big of parties. And if they were, a lot of people were making cakes at home. So I couldn't find any flour. So it was a lot of at-home baking going on during COVID, and people didn't really need us like that.
Most definitely. We'll talk about the business today.
It's great. I really can't complain. I'm still growing and stuff like that, but I could be better. But I have high expectations for myself. Everyone else seems to think I'm in a great place, but I think I could definitely do a little better.
I think you're downplaying it. A little bit. Talk about it. Look, you got your own, own space in which you can work in. Just kind of describe that. Talk about it in detail and, everything, your whole kit, bang, and caboodle. Talk about it.
So I have an at-home kitchen studio, and it's fully equipped for the most part. I don't have to really outsource kitchen stuff outside of when I do my retail work. I do have to go to a kitchen for that. But it's not too expensive. So I just really want to get to the point where I have my own entire storefront. That's really the goal here. So
that's a long-term play, storefront.
Yes.
For sure. And are you thinking just, baking only, or are you, you trying to foray into the restaurant life?
So I'm gonna stay away from restaurant stuff just because I just don't like hot cooking. People get real weird about their food, and it's a lot more license and stuff that you have to have, a lot more rules you have to follow, and it's just not for me. I'll stick to my at-home cooking at home. My hot cooking at home.
You cook?
Yeah, I know how to cook. If I wanted to open up a restaurant, I definitely could. I just know what goes behind opening up a restaurant because I've worked at a couple and it's just too stressful.
For sure. What's some of them go-to meals? Like you got your man coming over, you trying to whip it up, trying to do it up. What you putting together, or are you putting anything together?
Well, I don't really have those type of nights. Hypothetically, though, if that was a thing, I would definitely probably make some jambalaya because.
Jambalaya
is great. That's like one of my favorite dishes. Are
you doing like a lot of the New Orleans style dishes?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Jambalaya, gumbo. You know how to make the beignets. Etouffee? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to check you out. I'll rock with that. Etouffee. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. I guess for some people that's looking to follow in your footsteps, right? Mm-hmm. What's some advice you could give them?
Practice a lot. Put yourself out there. It can be really hard at first, especially if you don't feel like your product is good enough to be seen, especially if you go on Instagram or social media in general and you see all these people doing these really nice cakes. It can be intimidating because that used to be me. But it just took me practicing and posting what I had. So now it's good to kind of see the progress. I'd also say to take some business classes. You don't have to go to college, but you can sign up for some business classes just to see how you should run it, finances and all of that. It's very important, and that can make or break it if you really want to take it seriously. And network as much as possible. In Georgia, we have this thing called the Business Chamber of Commerce. If you can get into that and talk to the right people, you can really find yourself in good positions. In most states, like if you're in the United States, you should be able to find some version of that. So yeah, those three things are probably pretty important.
Most definitely. And so I know you said, storefront is the long-term play, but who kind of inspired you just to, really just get into, I guess, business and just really pursue that, career as an entrepreneur?
Honestly, it was so many different factors that made me want to have my own business. I kind of always knew I didn't want to work for anybody because I never liked being told what to do, even by my parents. So I knew that was the route I had to take, but it would be little things like watching sitcoms and stuff and seeing them go to the same job every single day and complain about it. And then sometimes I would meet adults like that, and I was like, oh, yeah, this can't be me. I can't sit at a cubicle every single day. So that's one of the factors. I used to watch my Super Sweet 16, and I saw how rich their parents were, and my parents weren't that rich. And I said, yeah, I have to get that rich. So I can do that for my daughter since I'm not going to be able to have that. And I like cooking in general. So it's like I knew if you can cook or bake, then you can do something without having to be told what to do.
Most definitely. And so, just kind of talking about food. What's some of your favorite food spots in the city? Or like some of your favorite bakeries to go hit up, when you got some free time?
So I like Sweet Brown Sugar Bakery. It's in Grayson. I like to go there because they have a lot of baked goods as well as like sandwiches and other little cafe stuff and coffee and things like that. So I like to go there and do work and just sit. As far as like food, I really like foreign foods. So I would have to say Okibaru. It's a ramen place in Atlanta, and it's very good. It's amazing. It's so good. And let's see. Some other places I've been to. Oh, I like Iron Age. It's a Korean spot. I like to go there too. I like a lot of Asian food. That's usually where I'm like running to go get.
You familiar with Piece of Cake?
Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything about that.
That was my spot.
I just heard some things back when I used to work at this other bakery. I heard some things about them from the other workers that worked there, and I was like, ooh, okay, all right.
Most definitely. Who's some people in the space you're wanting to collab with, in the future, with some dream collabs?
I would say Zumbo. He's an Australian pastry chef. There's another one whose name I cannot remember. You might have seen him on Instagram. He makes these huge chocolate sculptures and stuff. I would love to. He actually has a show on Netflix, like a school that he does. So I'd love to be able to meet him. And Yolanda Camp, she's a Canadian cake maker, and she makes these really, really cool, realistic cakes. So, yeah. Most
definitely. What's some of the toughest cakes you done made? Or have, what's some of the craziest requests you've maybe had?
I've had some crazy requests, but I don't always take them.
Talk about them.
I've had, if you can. I've had some erotic cakes requests that I don't do. I just don't like it. It's gross. I also had people wanting me to make like Jordans and stuff like that, and I'm not a big fan of fondant. I kind of prefer more simple, elegant cakes. I used to kind of want to do everything, but as I got older, I kind of found my niche and my style, so I just kind of stick to that now.
Fondant, talk about that. Like, what's the differences between fondant and maybe it's just a regular sheet cake?
So fondant is actually what you cover it in. So fondant is essentially like a edible Play-Doh instead of like buttercream, which is just the regular icing.
Got you. So like a lot of the molding of like the cakes requires the fondant, right?
Yeah, you can use buttercream, but it's easier. Like there's some shapes, like 3D shapes you can do with a cake and use buttercream, but most of the time people want fondant. For sure.
And before we get up out of here, you got anybody you want to shout out, or maybe just want to shout out your online store, social medias?
Well, shout out to my mom and dad. Hi. And my sister.
Shout out to the fam.
And follow my Instagram page. It's Keys Cakery. My Facebook's Keys Cakery, and then my website is keyscakery.com, and my Etsy is also Keys Cakery.
Most definitely. Go tap in with Key. You feel me? She's most definitely one of the, best up and coming bakers in this space. I'm not gonna say in Atlanta. I would definitely say in the United States. I'm saying she got a lot of cake pops, from the cupcakes to the custom cakes. Go tap in with her. You definitely gonna be satisfied. But again, it's Jonchi. Another great episode. Kira, I appreciate you pulling up on me.
Of course.
Be up out of here.